There exists a subtle assumption embedded in contemporary life that transparency is invariably healthier than seclusion, that visibility fosters connection, that sharing cultivates a sense of belonging, and that the more open we are, the more genuine our lives will appear. However, many individuals encounter a starkly different reality. They engage in communication more than ever, yet feel increasingly fragmented within themselves. Their thoughts seldom remain completely private. Their days are perpetually accessible. Even moments that were once dedicated to introspection often transform into chances for documentation or reaction. Unbeknownst to them, many start to perceive themselves less as individuals with an inner life and more as participants in an ongoing exchange of information. Perhaps this explains why numerous individuals feel mentally overwhelmed despite spending significant time in solitude. The mind is seldom left entirely to its own devices. Its boundaries have become increasingly permeable, and as psychological boundaries begin to erode, something vital is quietly forfeited. Not liberty, not intellect, but the experience of possessing an inner world that is wholly yours. In the following moments, I wish to delve into a notion that receives surprisingly little focus. That privacy is not simply the absence of scrutiny. It is one of the essential conditions that enables a serene mind to exist at all. The more profound issue is not that individuals have become excessively social. Human beings have always relied on one another. Community has always been vital. The contemporary challenge is distinct. It is the gradual erosion of psychological distance. For the majority of history, privacy existed organically. Conversations vanished once they concluded. Thoughts remained confined to journals. Errors faded with the passage of time. Silence dominated much of everyday existence. In contemporary times, the mental landscape has transformed. Communication has become incessant. Availability is now anticipated. Visibility has become commonplace. The distinction between public and private has increasingly blurred. Consequently, many individuals bear an unseen cognitive load. A portion of the mind remains attuned to potential interruptions, to incoming messages, to responses that may soon be necessary, to audiences, whether they are real or imagined. Even in the absence of physical presence, awareness frequently extends socially. This alters the very fabric of consciousness. A private thought evolves differently than one formed with perceived observers in proximity. Reflection shifts when it anticipates eventual sharing. Emotion transforms when it is swiftly converted into communication. Identity evolves when expression gradually supplants contemplation. None of these changes occur dramatically. They unfold quietly, one minor adjustment at a time. Over months and years, the inner realm becomes progressively occupied, not necessarily by anxiety, merely by permeability. Everything enters with greater ease. Everything departs more swiftly. There is diminished time for experiences to settle before being succeeded by another. This state engenders a subtle fatigue, not due to a lack of information in the mind, but because it lacks enclosure, just as a house without walls cannot provide shelter. A mind devoid of healthy psychological boundaries struggles to offer respite. Thus, privacy is not solely about secrecy. It pertains to maintaining the conditions under which attention, identity, emotion, and understanding can develop without constant exposure. Perhaps privacy is more accurately viewed not as a retreat from the world, but as the stewardship of one's inner environment. Like any environment, the mind necessitates boundaries to remain livable. This stewardship is founded on three subtle dimensions. The first aspect is informational privacy. Every piece of information we encounter occupies cognitive space. Most conversations regarding information focus on its accuracy. However, Less emphasis is placed on its quantity, or its timing, or its necessity. A peaceful mind is not achieved by knowing everything. It is fostered by permitting only what is worthy of entry. Healthy psychological boundaries begin with selective permeability. Not every opinion warrants consideration. Not every event necessitates immediate awareness. Not every conversation merits unrestricted access to one's attention. Boundaries are not acts of rejection. They are acts of discernment. They define which experiences are welcomed inward and which remain external. The second dimension is temporal privacy. Much of modern life operates under the assumption that every moment is potentially accessible. A message can arrive at any time. An interruption can happen during almost any activity. Availability gradually becomes a habit. Yet, uninterrupted periods of private time fulfill a crucial psychological role. They enable thoughts to reach completion, questions to deepen, feelings to clarify, meaning to surface. Without temporal privacy, consciousness remains in a state of constant responsiveness rather than reflection. The mind starts reacting more quickly than it comprehends. Thus, periods of uninterrupted solitude are not mere voids. They are spaces for development. Much of what we regard as wisdom emerges only after experiences have been undisturbed long enough to internally organize themselves. The third dimension encompasses existential privacy. Perhaps the most profound boundary lies in the understanding that not every facet of life necessitates external validation. Some experiences gain depth precisely because they are kept private, not concealed out of fear, safeguarded out of respect. Certain joys become more personal when they are not immediately shared with others. Certain aspirations develop more fully before they are made public. Certain relationships grow deeper through quiet companionship rather than constant exhibition. There exists a significant dignity in permitting aspects of life to exist solely for those who experience them. Existential privacy maintains an independent center of gravity, a space where identity evolves through direct experience, rather than incessant scrutiny. This center becomes increasingly precious in cultures that prioritize visibility over introspection. When informational privacy, temporal privacy, and existential privacy begin to function in harmony, something extraordinary happens. The mind regains its coherence. Attention becomes less fragmented. Thoughts develop greater completeness. Emotions become less reactive. Identity becomes less reliant on external interpretation. In this context, privacy does not equate to isolation. It represents incubation. It fosters the conditions under which an authentic inner life can gradually become more articulate. Many individuals seek clarity by introducing new concepts. At times, clarity emerges through reduction, by limiting unnecessary access to the mind, by reinstating thoughtful boundaries, by acknowledging that consciousness necessitates both openness and protection. Just as breathing relies equally on inhalation and exhalation, psychological well-being depends on engagement with the world and a regular return to one's own inner self. This is where privacy begins to take on the characteristics of opulence, not because it alienates individuals from society, but because it safeguards one of the rarest conditions in modern life: mental enclosure. Traditionally, luxury has been assessed through the ownership of external possessions. Increasingly, the most valuable assets are those that exist within us. A morning free from interruptions, a conversation that goes unnoticed, an afternoon devoid of superfluous communication, the capacity to contemplate without the pressure of an immediate reply, the liberty to change one's perspective in private, the opportunity to experience joy without the need to document it, the dignity of possessing aspects of life that are entirely one's own. These represent subtle forms of wealth. They cannot be acquired through direct means. They arise from self-restraint, from establishing boundaries, from the conscious acknowledgement that not all meaningful experiences require exposure. Contemporary culture frequently lauds transparency, There is authentic merit in being open. However, transparency without limits ultimately leads to permeability. And permeability devoid of discernment gradually results in exhaustion. Privacy reinstates balance. It serves as a reminder that depth often flourishes away from constant visibility. Similar to roots hidden beneath the ground, much of life's significant growth occurs out of sight. This concealment is not a deficiency. It is a source of strength. It enables one's identity to develop without incessant interference. Perhaps this is why psychological boundaries are perceived as luxurious. They foster an environment where tranquility is no longer a mere accident. It becomes a sustainable state. Perhaps serenity is less about fleeing the world, and more about controlling how the world influences us. The mind does not attain peace simply because life becomes quieter. It achieves peace when its boundaries become more discerning. Privacy is often misinterpreted as a form of distance from others. Yet, at its core, it signifies a closeness to oneself. It embodies the quiet assurance that not every thought needs to be voiced. Not every moment requires sharing. Not every experience needs to be shared publicly in order to hold significance. A well-guarded inner life does not equate to a diminished existence. In fact, it can often be a more profound one. This may be the concealed richness found in maintaining psychological boundaries. They safeguard something that is becoming increasingly rare. A sanctuary within yourself that is tranquil enough for clear thinking, expansive enough for genuine feelings, and private enough to truly belong to you.